Hey everyone, and welcome to the Eagle Eye Podcast presented by Nissan. Reuben Frank, Dave Zanagaro. Rube, how you doing?
I'm doing well. It's now the off season, isn't it?
It is officially the off season, even though there's not really any such thing, as we'll get into today a little bit.
Yeah, but it's kind of sad when it hits you. There's no football anymore until the fall.
Yeah, it'll be a long time. I was excited to watch the Super Bowl. We'll talk about that game in a little bit. We'll obviously start with Haason Reddick in a moment and the news that came out about him, but we have some stay or go a little bit later, some coaching updates for the Eagles. And this is our first podcast since we found out the Eagles are going to Brazil. So I want to talk about that a little bit too.
Yeah, make sure your passport's updated.
It is. I checked. We're good to go.
Good.
But let's start with the Haason Reddick news. It came out on Super Bowl Sunday before the game that Reddick had been granted permission by the Eagles to seek a trade. That was from Ian Rappaport of NFL Network. Not shocking that we knew something had to give here with his contract. What do you make of the report? What do you make of the situation?
Yeah, I guess it's not shocking just because it just seemed like there wasn't going to be a real neat resolution. I just don't think they were going to sign him to a long-term deal. And I don't think he certainly wasn't going to be happy playing on the final year of his deal. So something had to give, like you said. I think this past year, and I don't know if the Bradbury situation directly affects the Reddick situation, but generally Howie doesn't like to, and Haason Reddick's not an old player, but I think he's in that range where Howie really has to think long and hard about, do I want to give money to a guy who is either declining a little bit now, and he was really good this year, but he wasn't as good as the previous year. And at his age, is he going to, did we see the start of a decline? The Bradbury decline obviously was dramatic as any we've seen. But in that range, it happens. And I think one thing that this team in 2023, people, what happened to this team? They just looked old and slow. And I think there were a lot of things that contributed to the collapse. But I think Howie wants to get this defense younger and faster. And I don't think a multi-year deal for Haason Reddick fits into that approach.
Interesting. I hadn't really thought about his age as much in terms of this. He's 29. He turns 30 in September, has obviously been really productive. 4 straight years with double-digit sacks, 2 straight years with double-digit sacks with the Eagles. This past year, you're right, it was a drop-off, but early in the season, not to make excuses for him, but I will, he had the thumb, and that clearly affected him. And then late in the season, everyone was bad. The defense was just a wreck. He was dropping more. The whole thing was a mess. So I have a hard time just pinpointing him. Yeah. But you're right. Overall, the numbers were down. He wasn't as effective.
Yeah. And he's a guy who I don't know. I like Haason. I think he's a good guy. He's fun. He's fun to be around. I don't know if he fits into just what they want this team to be moving forward. And he's a guy that speaks his mind. He's a guy that doesn't pull any punches when they switch coordinators and everybody else on the defense is like, well, we just gotta, go do our jobs. And Sean was a good coach and Matt's a good coach. Haason Reddick sat in his locker and said, This is really hard. This is hard to do. It's obviously affecting us. And the change was, made things really tough for us. And that could be a part of it. I just think, and look, it's a position where they obviously need help. So I think on the one hand, you're like, how do you not sign Haason Reddick when you don't have any productive edge rushers other than him? But on the other hand, they'll tell us that they believe in Nolan Smith, and I'm sure they'll add somebody. But if you do trade him, it's risky because obviously sacks were way, way down, especially the second half of the year. You could say he was part of the problem. You could say he could be part of the solution with a new staff. It's a tricky situation, and I'm really curious to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I want to get into Nolan Smith in a little bit, but let's lay out the Haason Reddick contract because when he
And I
signed,
think Nolan Smith really kind of is a big part of this equation.
yeah, which is why I want to get to it in a minute. But first, I want to lay out the contract because Haason Reddick, when he signed, 3 years, 45 million, it was a little surprising that they got him at that price because he had played really well. He had back-to-back sack years in two different systems. So you're thinking, okay, this guy has been productive. They get him for what I thought was a really good deal at the time, and he proved that to be the case really quickly. He has 16 sacks. He'll count the playoff ones, which, hey, he did. He was great in the playoffs.
Gives him 19 and a half.
Yeah, until the Super Bowl, and we know the field was a mess. So, yeah, he quickly outplayed it. He wanted a new contract almost immediately. He didn't have any leverage last year. It was clear he was unhappy with the contract, but he showed up and played because when you have 2 years left on a deal that you just signed, you don't really have a leg to stand on. But now, I mean, according to Over the Cap, he's the 17th highest paid edge rusher in the league. That's way too low.
Yeah, he's a top 10 edge rusher. Well above top 10, well above 10th, I guess is what I'm saying. The impressive thing about him, I mean, I think about it, I guess he's had double-digit sacks under 4 different coordinators the last 4 years. He's a really good player. He's a really good pass rusher, and he's going to get his 12, 13 sacks for somebody next year, most likely, wherever he is.
No, I will say that I don't think them giving him permission to seek a trade necessarily means he's gone because we've seen in recent years them give this to Fletcher Cox. They gave this to Darius Slay, the opportunity to go out and kind of see what the market has for them. And I think this is a little different because I'd argue Reddick is still in his prime, whereas other guys are probably beyond it. But I don't know what the market holds for Reddick. He should have gotten more 2 years ago, and he didn't get a ton. I tend to think there would be teams willing to pay him more than maybe the Eagles will. So if that's the case and he can get that, then it becomes, well, what's the compensation? What do the Eagles get in return? They can't give this guy away.
Yeah, I just think teams and the analytics say you just don't want to give up a ton of premium picks for a guy who's 30 or about to turn 30. When's he turn 30? September. You don't see a lot of guys that age. I mean, it happens. You just don't see a lot of guys that age getting traded just because how long is he going to be this good? How long is he going to be a double-digit guy? 2 more years? 1 more year? I don't know. The analytics tell you that there's a certain point, and he's getting close to that point where whatever position you play, except maybe O-line, but your production's going to go down. It's just inevitable. And, they kind of gambled on Bradbury, and I liked the Bradbury contract because he was so good in 22 and didn't show any signs of any sort of decline. He had one of his best years. I had no problem with that contract, but here we are. So I could see how he's saying, I'm not going to make that same mistake. And, maybe they offer Reddick some kind of 1-year deal to try to, keep him for a year and see where he is as a player. I don't know. It's hard to imagine him playing on the 3rd year of that deal this year, but it could happen.
No, that's not happening. There's just no way he plays on that 3rd year of the deal the way it is.
You wouldn't think. But it's an interesting standoff, and I'm not sure there's a really simple solution.
Yeah, and you want a happy player too. You don't want a disgruntled player. The Eagles have been pretty good to not have those types of situations kind of lingering with the team. If he shows up on the 3rd year of that deal, he's not going to be happy. I don't think he shows up if there's not some movement. Yeah. But if he does, he's not going to be happy with it. And I get that. And from a cap perspective too, he was already a pretty good candidate to either rework the deal or to give an extension because of how high the cap. He has the highest cap number on the team this upcoming season. So there needed to be movement one way or the other. This seeking a trade is a way for movement to get started, whether it comes in the form of a trade, whether it comes in the form of an extension.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, Howie's good at this stuff, and he's creative, and he knows how to structure things to work for both sides. I think that's the most likely scenario, is that they figure something out where there's not a huge risk for the Eagles if his play does decline, but it gets him enough extra money on top of what he's supposed to make this year to keep him happy. I don't know exactly what that would look like, but Howie's pretty good at doing that.
Well, I'm trying to so you look at the edge rushers, he has to at least get in the 20s.
Yeah.
Right now he's at 15 million per year. Like, he has to, I would think maybe like 25 a year. So you're talking like a 2-year, $50 million extension.
Yeah. I mean, that's what players of his level get. Edge rushers, his ability and his production. It's a lot of money. I think the fact that we got to this point is a pretty good hint that Howie's not in a real big hurry to do that kind of thing. I mean, I'm just speculating, but I don't think Reddick and his people do this if they feel like they're on some sort of path to a deal like that.
Yeah, and it's funny because like it comes up in terms of seeking a trade, and that's not really what this means. It's not like his agent is going around saying, "What will you give the Eagles for Haason Reddick?" It's more about establishing his value.
Right.
That's the important thing, because any kind of trade would come with a built-in extension for the player. So it's really about establishing his value and going back to the Eagles and saying, "Hey, this is what Team X offered us, or would offer us if he was a free agent." Now, obviously, that's a little different when he's under contract, but you try to establish the value, and then if the value is a lot higher than the Eagles are willing to go, then I think you go and you try to figure out, okay, well, what's the compensation? Because we're not giving away one of our best players. We need to have a good return. And that's a little tricky too. If you're the Eagles and you're looking at this saying, well, we need something back, what do you think they ask for?
I don't know. Like I said, I mean, he's not a young kid. I don't think you're going to get a 1 for him.
No, I think the asking price should be like a 2 and a 3.
Yeah, that's. I don't think you're going to get a 1. I think a 2 and a 3, a 2 and a 4. I mean,
you can ask for 1.
Yeah,
that's how negotiations work, right? Like,
I'm sure they will. So that's for 2 1s
Yeah.
To start. But I mean, if you're sitting in Howie Roseman's desk right now, I mean, is Haason Reddick a $25 million a year player? I mean, the numbers say he is, but if you're Howie and you're trying to figure out what went wrong this past year and who do we want to be in 2024 as a football team, and do we want to pay him this kind of money? I just don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure how he wants to make that kind of financial commitment to a guy who's going to be 30 when the season starts.
Say you're Howie. We're not thinking about what he's thinking. You are Howie at this point. You're the GM. What do you do? Where do you kind of lean on this?
Well, if I was Howie, I wouldn't be doing a podcast.
Thank you.
Although
he did used to have a radio show, which is crazy to think about.
He did. I'd be concerned about giving him $25 million a year.
I would be too, but I'd look around and say, we value pass rush. We yell it from the mountaintops that we value the trenches. We have a proven commodity who he is 29, and I know he's played a lot in the league, but he might still be getting better as an edge rusher, which sounds weird because he's been in the league for a while, but he hasn't been an edge rusher for as long as a lot of guys at his age.
Right.
A pure edge rusher. So yeah, I understand the worry there, and I don't think he's as good as some of the top tier guys in the league. I don't think he's Myles Garrett. I don't think he's TJ Watt.
Sure.
I think he's in that next level. And that next level is pretty darn good too. I'd try to keep him. I would try to. I'd be nervous about giving 25 mil a year. I'd maybe offer 2 for 40 and then maybe settle on 2 for 45.
Yeah, I think that's a good approach. I think 22, 23 a year is a little more palatable, but it just sounds less. I think part of the equation also, you mentioned Nolan, like, do we know exactly what Josh Sweat is after, he kind of declined the second half.
And that's the tricky thing because he's entering a contract year as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And who would you feel more comfortable paying? He's significantly younger.
Yeah.
He's 3 years younger than Haason Reddick. He is still presumably an ascending player. But I also thought he really waned down the stretch when he had to play a ton of snaps.
Yeah. Oh, he clearly did. We go 8 straight games without a sack, and 7 or 8, and didn't really get close during that stretch. I think he might have had one in the playoff game, 1 or 1.5. But I'd be more comfortable paying Sweat than Reddick just because of the age. And yeah, I think
Sweat right now is at 13-3 on the extension he signed a couple years before 21.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sweat would be the guy for me just because of the age difference.
Yeah, and let's talk about Nolan because I think he's a really.
And by the way, I mean, it's not like Reddick took off the second half of the year either. I mean, he struggled down the stretch too.
Yeah, well, everyone did.
Everyone did. Yeah, and you have to really understand: was it the player? Was it the coordinators? Was it the scheme? Was it the position?
It seemed like the situation was just so screwed up that like I have a really hard time holding it against any one individual. Like they all deserve blame, but like saying, well, Reddick really fell off, but yeah, but like look at everyone else too. So
no, I mean, like everyone we've talked about on the pod, like AJ Brown, well, second half of the year, Reed Blankenship, well, the second half of the year, it's like everybody on the roster except Britton Covey tailed off the second half of the year.
Nolan Smith, he kind of flew under the radar this year. He had a disappointing rookie season, and this is a guy that in training camp, there was a lot of hype about. We were all watching him every day going, wow, this guy's really good. He even took some of the hype away from Jalen Carter for a while in training camp, and then obviously Carter starts off the way he did, and all the focus is on, wow, what a great first-round pick, and you lose sight of Nolan Smith, who barely played.
Yeah, it was a weird year, and it surprised me how little he played early. His snaps finally increased, I don't know what, the last 5-6 weeks. But the production wasn't there. I don't know what they have in him. I don't think normally you don't condemn a rookie, especially at that position, if he doesn't produce. We've seen so many rookie edge rushers, but the fact that he was a 1, I mean, I think you forget that he was a first-round pick since he wasn't their first-round pick, but he was. It was at the end of the round, but he's a first-round pick. You expect more. And it was almost like he became an afterthought. I mean, there's some games he got 4 snaps. Like, what are you doing here?
And it felt like a common question for really Sean Desai early in the year, like, when's Nolan going to play more? And he kept saying, yeah, the snaps are coming. And they didn't, under him at least.
Yeah, and his answer would be like, well, we have Sweaty, we have Reddick, we have BG getting his snaps. Who are you going to take off the field? Well, then those guys all started, well, not BG as much, but the other 2 started kind of struggling, and Nolan finally got some snaps, but it was at the end of the year. And
even when they traded Derek Barnett, you thought, okay,
yeah,
if you're going to do that, then let's see Nolan Smith. And we didn't really see more of him at that.
No, not for another month after that. Yeah, and they keep saying, I mean, Howie said at his exit interview, whatever you want to call it, we still believe in the player. We think, we think really highly of him. I haven't seen it, and I've learned you don't draw conclusions about a rookie, about his career after 1 year. We've seen so many. I mean, BG certainly a good test case. I mean, it took him 6 years to get going, but
there was a major injury in there too.
Yeah, there was. And he's an extreme case. And every player that has his first 5 years are not very good doesn't mean they're going to be.
And we've done that with how many players? Like, BG did that. So
yeah. I know it's been 5 years, but 1 year. I mean, certainly you don't want to draw any conclusions, but I would have liked to see more. The shoulder, I think, is a concern because, I mean, he kind of like jokes about it, like, "Oh, there's my old shoulder again."
I'll never forget when he said that to me after the preseason game. He was like, "Sometimes it's my baby. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't." What?
Yeah.
Like, he said it jokingly, but like he meant it. Like,
that was alarming.
It's alarming for a first-round pick. Like, big investment in this kid.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, I mean, he left a couple games with it, I think. It was obviously an issue during the year. So,
always has it wrapped.
Yeah, always. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I don't know if maybe we'll hear in the next month that he underwent some kind of procedure on it. But they certainly need more from him in year 2. And especially, I mean, it's really hard to evaluate that position when, I mean, BG's 35. I think he'll be here, but he's going to give you what he has, but I don't know how much he has.
Yeah, and it's not a guarantee. They still have to sign him. He's going to be a free agent.
Yeah.
Your 2 top edge rushers are entering the final year of their deals. Reddick has been given permission to seek a trade. Nolan Smith is an unknown. The only other edge rushers are, returning edge rushers are Patrick Johnson and Taron. Like, Taron Jackson don't have much there.
Yeah, I knew we were gonna get out of this segment without you mentioning Taron Jackson and Patrick Johnson.
Well, those are the guys who have been around, who have played a little bit.
Yeah. I feel like they're going to have to bring some reinforcements in. You can't go with, whether it's a free agent or draft a guy somewhere. I mean, I've got them drafting like 7 different things in the first round. So, I mean, they do have 3 picks in the first 2 rounds.
They have Terrell Lewis. Maybe like he finds something here as a former draft pick.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's a scary position. And
such an important position.
And that's what I was getting at was, if you can't, in a modern NFL, if you can't pressure a quarterback, I don't care who he is, he's going to pick you apart. It could be average quarterbacks become really, really good quarterbacks when they can stand in the pocket and not be pressured. And we saw that the second half of the year. Guys like Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield, they're not great quarterbacks, but when you don't pressure them, you throw Tyrod Taylor. I mean, those guys are not elite quarterbacks, but against this team, they were. Pressure wasn't the only problem. It helps when you cover someone, and that was an issue too. But it all goes hand in hand. I think they've got a lot of difficult questions at that edge rusher position.
Yeah, we'll move on.
We don't even know who the edge rusher coach is going to be. If it'll be we don't. I mean, yeah, I do think Fangio is going to help, but you got to have the players too.
Yeah, we'll follow that Reddick situation throughout the offseason. There needs to be some kind of resolution, and I don't know when it's going to come. Super Bowl. It was a boring game for a lot of it, but it ended up being pretty exciting at the end.
Yeah, it really did. And that happens a lot where you're like, God, this game sucks. And then you're like, oh my God, this game's incredible.
Although, what a punter battle in that first half, huh?
Oh, yeah, I know you love that stuff. That was your kind of game. Long
with
field goals.
And
lots of punting.
Back and forth, man.
Dave loves his special teams.
Down at the 1 yard line.
Yeah, that was a great play.
It was the punt covered Super Bowl in the first half.
He just stood there and the ball came right to him. It was amazing. I was actually in a restaurant in Ardmore last night. I went to a concert at the Ardmore Music Hall, and they had the game on NFL Network, but it was like that sped up version where they just take out all the irrelevant plays and then it comes on like 3 series later. And it's great because you watch the whole Super Bowl in an hour. And that was like a 5-hour game. It's like one of the longest games ever. But there were so many huge plays and momentum changes. I mean, that third down at the end of the fourth quarter, if the 49ers convert, the game's over.
Yeah.
It was a 3rd and 4. I thought the Chiefs' ability to get pressure when they really, really needed it was incredible. Spags, what a job by Spags. I mean, that was a really bad defense before he got there a few years ago.
He was kind of like a laughing stock a little bit after being a failed head coach. People were like, why are they going back to Spags? He's been great.
He's been incredible. And, and Mahomes, I mean, his ability to perform at an extremely high level when the stakes are the highest and the pressure's the greatest, that's such a rare trait in any sport. And, I mean, the way he played at the end of the fourth quarter and overtime, I mean, you think about what's at stake here, and he's playing flawlessly. I mean, they got 4th downs that if they don't convert, the game's over. And he's just, let's go run for 10 yards. I mean, he is such a special player.
That draw play was awesome.
It was incredible. There were so many plays like that. I mean, that pass to Kelsey to set up the tying field goal. I mean, I thought for a second he might get in, but there were just so many huge plays at the end. What did you make? You know, Shanahan's getting beat up a lot for taking the ball. I get it, but that's not why they lost.
No, there's a bunch of different strategic elements to this rule, which is what makes it so fun. I would have, like me personally, I would want the ball second, but I understand Shanahan's thought that you get first crack at sudden death.
Yeah.
Like if both teams score. Now you can say that even if you score a touchdown and kick the extra point, the second team can go win it with a 2-point conversion. Sure, but there's no guarantee they do that. And then you get first crack at sudden death. I know all you have to do is get a field goal. So I understand his thought process, but I'm more in line with Andy Reid. And I've always been like that. Like, I want to know what I need. Like, whether it's bowling or darts or whatever, like, I want to know what I have to get. And that's why I would want the ball second.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I know the Niners came under some scrutiny for some of the guys didn't really understand the new playoff rules, but
that's not good. That's not good, though.
It's not good. And the fact that, the Chiefs had been really prepped well about it. But again, either way, you're trying to score a touchdown. I think that awareness of the exact situation is important. But again, that's not why they lost the game. I mean, I think there's a good lesson there, and I love the fact that, was it Chris Jones said, Andy's been telling us about the playoff overtime rules since training camp. It sounds like Andy Reid, but again, I mean,
I thought Andy burning that timeout was going to kill them.
It's terrible.
It was like, let's play the hits, Andy.
Yeah, but. There was I thought he called a good game offensively. I mean, there was some great play calling in there.
He went with that same motion for the game-winning touchdown. Unbelievable.
Yeah. If it works, just keep dialing it up, right?
It was special.
Yeah. And, in overtime, like once, I think the first play their first offensive play in overtime after the Niners kicked the field goal, I think it was a Mahomes 12-yard pass to Kelsey out to the 37, and now you're like, you know what? They're going to score. They're going to get 7 here.
But then MVS has that dummy play where he's going the wrong way.
Yeah. Oh, that was awful. Yeah, that was terrible.
The look on Mahomes' face after that play was hilarious. He was like, "What are you doing? You had a 6-yard gain."
Yeah, he has trouble hiding his emotions. But I think it was a 2nd and 14. Then I think they got 8 yards on third. Was that the play that set up the 4th and 1?
Yeah, I think so.
2, I think. But anyway, I don't know. But yeah, it was once they started rolling, you just they're going to score here. And the Hardman. I mean, how about starting the year with the Jets and catching the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl? Talk about two extremes.
Yeah.
I mean,
I always liked Mecole Hardman. I thought he was going to be a good player.
well, he was good enough Sunday.
Well,
yeah, but I hear you. Yeah, it was. I just kept sitting there saying, I'm so glad I don't have to write 10 observations right now.
How about Travis Kelce, too? Like, does nothing in the first half except assault his coach. And then in the second half, just there's Travis Kelce. Him and Patrick Mahomes are going to figure it out.
Yeah, there's this thing with the Chiefs where, like, they're just going to figure it out. Like, and that's why I think there's no panic. When they haven't scored their first, I don't know, 6 possessions or whatever, it's just like keep going, just keep working, keep doing it. There's never, with Mahomes, like, eventually he's going to figure it out.
This is back-to-back years they've beaten better teams in the Super Bowl.
Down 10 at halftime, both times. Yeah. And that's why it's just the whole Spags thing, that defense, like, they'll keep you in it until Mahomes gets going. And I thought that's why the defense, like, I don't know, you can't vote for the defense as MVP, but their ability to shut down the Niners and pressure Purdy.
That Chris Jones pressure was huge. Ayuk was it Ayuk?
Yeah.
Or was it Jennings? Someone was open. It would have been a touchdown.
Yeah. On that third down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, for the Chiefs defense keeping them in it, keeping it close while the offense kind of figured it out. And you could see the Chiefs offense just kind of figuring it out. And once they get into a rhythm, you just can't stop them. And that's the other, like, with 7 seconds left, I thought Andy might take one more shot at the end zone.
I would have.
In the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
But I thought Romo actually made a good point. And Romo is all over the place.
Well, he had to make a good point eventually with how much he talked during that game.
Yeah, I hear you.
My man's getting paid by the word.
I think Andy probably felt like they had the momentum. 7 seconds left. It's close. Like, the last thing you want is to.
But you got Patrick Mahomes.
I know. But
trust him to get rid of the football if it's even if you take you can't take a grounding, but, like, even if you, like, screw up the play, he'll get you out of it.
Yeah, but I think Andy felt like let's just get it to overtime. We have the momentum. Our defense is playing great. They're not going to stop Patrick. I kind of like. I was yelling for one more play, but was it 6 seconds or 7 seconds? It was 7, right?
I think it was 6.
I think they changed it from 6 to 7.
6 or 7. Okay,
I think, but it was close. It was close, but it worked out. And, you start talking about these two guys' legacies, and I mean, 3 Super Bowls for Andy now, 3 championships. He's piling up some numbers. He's only 5 behind Belichick for playoff wins. I don't think Bill's getting any more. I just don't think he might coach again in 25, but I don't think he's getting any more. And what's amazing about Andy is that he didn't win any titles here, but you look at where both teams were before he got there. I mean, the Eagles had won 2 playoff games in 18 years before he got here. And the Chiefs had won they'd had 9 losing seasons in our last 15 years. They hadn't won a playoff game in 10 years. They'd never had back-to-back seasons with a playoff win before he got there. So he's taken these 2 franchises and just kind of revitalized both. And I mean, obviously he brought Doug in, who won a Super Bowl. So his impact here went beyond when he was the head coach. And then you look around the league and his coaching tree, and yeah, it's incredible. Tom Melvin's got 3 Super Bowl rings now. Todd Pinkston got a ring Sunday. Happy for Todd. He's a good guy.
Running backs coach.
Yeah. Mark Donovan's up there on the podium, former Eagles team president. It's an incredible thing. And I think it's hard for a lot of Eagles fans because you're like, why couldn't you have done that when you were here? And, he's taken a lot of what he did wrong here and learned from it. Like, clock management and timeouts are still a little bit of an issue. But he's become a better coach, and certainly having 15. And then then you start. I asked you this online the other day: is Brett Veach a Hall of Famer? I mean, just to go into Andy's office and say, this kid at Texas Tech, we got to draft him. He's the best quarterback I've ever seen. Texas Tech, right? Mm-hmm. And here they are. So I'm happy for Andy. He's a good man. And Patrick Mahomes is 28. Your friend James Palmer asked a great question of the Chiefs owner. Which Hunt is it? I forget. Which
Clark Hunt?
Yeah, one of the Hunts. And he said, "What's your pitch? We've heard a lot of rumors about Andy. What's your pitch to keep him, to make him stay?" And he said, "Patrick Mahomes is under contract for 8 more years." It was a great quote. And then he said, "And I fully expect Andy to be back next year." So yeah, it was a fun game.
How could Andy walk away now?
It's hard to imagine. I mean, I don't think he does this to. I mean, he's already a Hall of Famer. It's like Kelsey. Like, how do you walk away? But
Andy's not taking the physical. Well, maybe he is taking the physical beating, but you know what I mean.
Kelsey.
You can just keep Kelsey away from him.
Jason Kelsey took quite a beating when he walked into that bush in the post-game party.
Jason's been enjoying himself the last few weeks.
You think? Excuse me. Yeah, I think he had a good time out there.
That's all I have. Did you care about any of the other hoopla that goes with the Super Bowl?
I did not. I don't watch halftime shows.
What do you do during halftime? Because I just want to be a part of the conversation. I want to know what people are talking about.
Yeah, I just don't care about the conversation. What did I do during halftime? I think I went through some track results. Milrose games.
Very on brand.
Oh, the Milrose games were Sunday morning. There were some great performances, a lot of world records.
Did you watch the anthem?
Yeah, and it's interesting. A friend of mine was in the one of the musicians that recorded Ron Kerber, who's in the Philly Pops. He's a Philly guy, obviously, he lives here, and he was one of the musicians who recorded the backing track for Reba McEntire. So that was really cool.
What kind of deal with the devil does she make that she looks the same now as she did 30 years ago?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. I thought it was okay. It was still a little too, we talked about this, a little too flourishy for me at the end.
She said brave twice, right?
Did she?
Yeah, I heard. Well, the only reason I heard that, I didn't really hear it, but apparently that's a big deal because the first brave is the end of the song for betting purposes.
Oh, interesting. People bet on the anthem.
Yeah, the over-under time.
Yeah, they actually, this guy Ron, who was in the one of the musicians who recorded it, he's actually got to sign something that he won't tell anyone how long it is.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah,
he's got to sign like a waiver or something. But yeah, do you remember Dr. Z, who used to write for Sports Illustrated?
Sure.
Paul Zimmerman, the legendary guy. He would time every national anthem. He would sit there with an old time stopwatch and be like, 2 minutes and 12 seconds. He was the best. Paul Zimmerman was the first guy that ever did preseason stats. He kept preseason stats every year. Like now you get them all in NFL Jesus, but back then, so he would call me like Saturday morning after like a Friday night preseason game, I need Keith Byers rushing stats from last night. But yeah, but it was a fun day. It was a long game, and I don't know how many times I just felt like it's really a lot more fun watching this on my couch on TV than being on a scaffolding outside a stadium, trying to write 10 observations and get ready for a post-game show. I love my job and I love doing that, but it's a lot less stressful this way.
Yeah. I like covering them from inside the stadium. That's fun.
Yeah. There's something to be said for covering them. It's a hell of an experience. It really is.
All right, let's take a break. We have some other stuff on the other side.
You deserve a car that thrills you, a car that puts goosebumps on your goosebumps. At Nissan, we got everything from turbocharged SUVs to 100% electric vehicles that'll make your heart beat faster. Experience the thrill for yourself and shop your local Nissan store at nissanusa.com today.
Celebrity cook Steve Martorano brings his Italian-American cooking back home to Philly. Enjoy Martorano's Prime at Rivers Casino and Steve's famous meatballs with Sunday gravy, prime steaks, and more. Make reservations at Martorano's Prime on Open Table.
All right, Rube, we're back here. The Eagles coaching staff still coming together. We know most of the major coaches on the team. They're still filling out some of the position coaches. We had some news within the last week.
What do we have?
Okay.
What's in the last week?
Yes.
I appreciate you setting me up, but I'm not exactly sure on the timing here. I'll have to...
Okay, sure. Well, we know. Sorry to do that to you. Christian Parker is a new one. It sounds like he's going to be coaching defensive backs. I don't know if we talked about Joe Casper already, but it sounds like he's coming with Fangio to coach safety. So it looks like they have that part of the defensive coaching staff in place now. Curious to see if they keep a Nichols coach or if they keep that position, because I think that's a valuable one. But
yeah,
Parker's a good hire. I was excited for them when they looked like they were going to get Carl Scott, and then that fell through. But Parker's another up-and-coming coach who looks like a pretty good candidate.
Yeah, and I think the one thing about all these guys they brought in is they're just more experienced than the guys they're replacing. And it's weird, like the Eagles won't announce anything until all the coaches are in place. That could be another, who knows when that'll be. But so, I mean, there's guys like we don't know that they're officially not going to be here. We're kind of assuming. It sure looks like the entire defensive staff is going to be replaced. You know, maybe Vic Fangio will like one of the young, like assistant position coaches and decide to keep him. Sorry about that. I forgot to mute my phone before the pod. But it sure looks like it's going to be a completely different defensive staff. I think you were away when Stout tweeted out a video talking about how much he was looking forward to going to Brazil, which was like, I'm watching that. I'm like, potential spam. Sorry.
Man, I get a ton of those calls. You know what I get now? I get the it's like a local number.
Yeah.
And it's just enough to make you think, is that like my dentist's office or something? And you answer it, and it's just a recording.
Yeah. Yeah, they're getting very shrewd the way they...
At least the potential spam, it's a quick silence. But those other ones are tricky now.
Yeah, or worse, it could be me. Like, oh.
Yeah, you always call me from those block numbers.
But yeah, so Stout tweeted out this video, and I guess it was the Eagles' way of telling everybody that he's going to be here. He's really the only assistant. We're assuming Kevin Patullo will be here because he's kind of Nick's most trusted guy.
And Nick kept talking about him during the year.
Nick didn't stop talking about him at his exit interview. Not really an exit interview.
Year-end press conference.
Yeah. I like to call it an exit interview. But other than Stout, like we don't know anybody who is going to be here. Now there's some positions on offense they haven't filled yet. So who knows? Maybe Aaron Moorhead will still be here, but it looks like a huge amount of turnover on the staff, which is the right thing to do, certainly, and very unusual for a team that didn't change its head coach.
Yeah, we're finding out more about the defense, which makes sense. Fangio's been around longer. They hired him first. They hired him as soon as they could.
Yeah.
So, like, that's coming together pretty quickly. Another one, this one was from Tim McManus, that Bobby King, who coached linebackers with the Titans, is coming. So, likely their new linebackers coach, which is an interesting one because they interviewed some really veteran candidates for that job and ended up going a little more inexperienced throughout.
Interviewed Mike Caldwell twice. I think they really wanted Mike on the staff. And, you know, Mike's another guy from that 99 Eagles team who became a successful coach in the league. One of like 13 guys that became a head coach or assistant coach in the NFL from that team, from the coaching staff or the roster. They interviewed him for the DC job before Miami cut ties with Fangio. And then they interviewed him for the linebackers coach under Fangio. And he ended up going to the Raiders, I believe, with Antonio Pierce. But he's a good coach, and it would have been a good hire. But, didn't work out there. But the only what is left on defense, we don't really know the structure of.
Yeah, that's the tricky thing. We think they'll have some sort of we don't think they have had kind of two defensive line coaches. They've had the interior guys under Tracy Rocker and then the edge guys under Jeremiah Washburn. And if you had to ask me one coach I would keep on the defensive side, it would be Washburn. So maybe he'll be back.
Could be. That's the thing about without announcing them. Like, we don't know how many guys are going to, like, how, we don't know how many guys at each spot there'll be. So we don't know what the structure will be. So it's hard to speculate. But
on offense, we don't know receiver, running back, or tight end.
Right. So as of now, those three guys, Jamel Singleton and Jason Michael, the tight ends coach, and Aaron Moorhead, the receivers coach. I mean, I guess they've either told them to go look for another job. None of them has, or they're kind of in limbo waiting to see what happens. It's a weird situation. I think it's interesting. Brian Johnson got hired by Washington. Unnamed position so far. They have a QB's coach. They have an OC. So maybe he'll be passing game coordinator or something. But each of the coaches have gotten another job. I mean, like DK McDonald went to Kansas. Like, they've all been lesser jobs.
Well, he's going to be co-defensive coordinator there.
Yeah, but I mean, that's a step down from the NFL.
Okay.
I would think. You're farther away from being a DC, certainly, from being an NFL DC. I mean, it's probably a good job, but I just think there's a commentary there about what the league thinks of the Eagles coaching staff last year. I mean, Sean Desai isn't anywhere, is he? I don't think he's gotten hired anywhere. Matt Patricia hasn't gotten hired anywhere.
Yeah, but he has a lot of options, Rube. Teams are calling him for both sides of the football.
One of the hot
he might
candidates,
be a GM
right?
by the end of this offseason.
That was a legendary tweet. That was great. It's like, just quote the agent while you're at it. Just don't say source. But like Brian Johnson got a lesser job. So it's none of these guys is being interviewed. None of these guys were interviewed for coordinator jobs or anything. So,
well, Brian Johnson was.
Yeah, he was. He wasn't going to get it.
I don't know that.
Well, he didn't.
Yeah, but all right. Were they sham interviews? Is that what you're saying?
I don't think he was ever going to certainly wasn't going to get a head coaching job.
That I agree with.
What OC jobs did he interview with for?
That I don't remember.
I think it's in my Google document I put together. Took hours. But yeah, I don't know. I just think there's a commentary there on what the league thought of their coaching staff. The fact that none of these guys was a hot candidate for anything. I mean, they interviewed for some things, but Alex Tanney got hired by, I don't remember, the Browns.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. But they have a quarterbacks coach too. So I don't know what his title is going to be. So still a lot to be determined, especially on offense. Like you said, running backs, receivers, and tight ends. So you would think want to get something in place soon. Yeah,
but they're way ahead of where they were last year. If you remember last year, they were so far behind after the Super Bowl. They didn't even announce. We didn't even know Desai was the DC until the combine.
Is that right?
Yeah, we're still a couple of weeks away from that.
Yeah. So
That's all I have on the coaching search.
I'm sorry.
That's all I have on the coaching search.
Yeah, I
Anything
think Kellen Moore just arrived in Philly on Monday, yesterday. So he had to get stuff settled with moving and all that. So I guess he's at the NovaCare now. I'm sure he's working on finishing out his staff.
Stay or go. We started our series online. You guys can read that. We have one each day over the next couple weeks. We don't need to go through every player, but let's go through the first three positions and some of the tricky ones. We're going on offense first. So quarterback, obviously Jalen Hurts is back. Obviously Tanner McKee is back under contract. Marcus Mariota is the one that's a little tricky. You and I both had him going. Think there's any chance he's back?
I guess there's a chance. I don't think it's a very big one. And by the way, off topic, but on the Mariota topic, I thought that piece they did in the pregame show on Hawaii, that Marcus narrated part of it, was extremely well done.
Did you notice I very quickly sent out my Q&A with Marcus about Hawaii?
I missed that, but that's good work by
very
you.
Opportunistic by me.
That was extremely well done. It was a very moving piece. But no, I don't think he'll be here. I think there's a chance they like Tanner McKee as the 2.
Look, if they get to camp and they're like, maybe he's not ready, then you go find someone.
Yeah.
But if you can get your 6th round pick to be your backup quarterback for 3 years, that is a huge boost.
Huge, because he's cost controlled as a 6th round pick. He's making minimum of the minimum and isn't costing anything against the cap. And he's here for another 3 years.
Running back, the only one that I think we all feel pretty confident will be back is Kenny Gainwell, just because he's under contract. He doesn't make a ton as a 5th round pick in the final year of his deal, and he's been a good player.
Yeah.
So we know he's back. After that, it's tricky.
Yeah, and Swift's the most interesting one. I think it's more likely than not he's not here. I do think there's a chance he's here. Running back contracts are weird, and I don't really know how much. Like you look at Miles Sanders' contract and what he got and the production they got out of him. Are people going to look at DeAndre Swift and say, well, he's a product of that offense and that O-line as well? I don't think that's entirely fair, but I think people are going to say that. And I mean, Miles Sanders' production dropped precipitously after they gave him that huge deal. And he earned that deal by playing behind this O-line. And running backs don't get big contracts anyway. So I think if teams look at DeAndre Swift and say, well, he's just another Miles Sanders, then his price might come down to the point where Howie's like, all right, I'll bring you back. I think he's a good player. And I think we talked about this last week. I think there's more there. I don't think they used him properly in a lot of times. I don't think they used him enough a lot of times. So I still think it's likely he won't be back, but there's a chance.
Yeah, you and I both had him going. I think like if there's not a deal out there and he has to take a cheap 1-year deal somewhere, he might as well do it here.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think maybe it's a fair chance. I think it's about a 30% chance. We'll see.
The one we disagreed on.
Free agency is going to be so much fun. That's like one of my favorite days.
I don't like that day.
No?
No. It's all playing defense. I don't like it. It's fun, but
it's fun
as a fan.
So you don't like fun things?
It's fun as a fan.
Okay.
Yeah. The only one we were different on at running back was Boston Scott. You had him going. I had him staying. I think I could go either way. I just think the Eagles see more value in him than a lot of other teams. And I know he didn't play a lot this year, but it was just because the guys in front of him stayed healthy.
Yeah.
He's a pretty good insurance policy.
He is. I just wonder if he might just want to try his luck somewhere else, getting a little more playing time. But I don't
know if that is out there for him.
I agree. And I think I wrote that, but just a hunch. But he could easily be here.
Receiver, I think we agreed.
On everything?
I believe so. Yeah.
I think the only guys I had back were AJ and Devontae.
And Covey.
And Covey, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's right. I mean, I don't think Quez is going to be back, certainly. And OZ, maybe, but like I didn't see it.
I didn't see it either.
Now, I do think one of those young receivers has a chance to come to camp and win a job. I just don't know which one it would be.
Yeah, and out of that whole group, Nagata is the one guy because I just really liked what I saw from him in camp. A lot of times you see these receivers flashing early, and then they just kind of get swallowed up. They lose their legs. Camp is hard. Camp's not that hard anymore, but I thought Nagata really had a consistent camp right through. Just caught the ball well. He's got good size. So if any of them have a chance, I mean, he's at the top of my list, but they're all long shots.
Jacob Harris is the other guy that I'll be keeping an eye on, but I can't put him on the roster right now.
Right.
On a little bit of a hunch.
What's your thought on Covey as more than a punt returner? Do you think he could be help you out in the slot a little bit?
I don't. And I like Covey. I don't see it.
Okay.
Yeah. You do a little bit?
I think there's a shot. I think there's a chance.
Okay.
He catches the ball well. He's elusive. He's quick. So he's got some things to work with. I don't think he'll ever be a, big time offensive player, but you go four wides, you put him out there, he'll get you 8 yards.
Yeah, I'd like to see him get that shot. I think he's earned it by what he's done on special teams, but I'm not very bullish on him as a receiver. But that said, he's well worth his roster spot.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's going to be here either way. So, yeah.
Sure. A few quick things here. The Hall of Fame class was announced since the last time we did a pod. No Eric Allen. That stinks.
It stinks. And a lot of people are asking me why I think he hasn't gotten the recognition he deserves. This is his first year as a finalist. And I think there's two reasons. And I think one of them is people look at those teams from the late 80s and early 90s, those Eagles defenses, as that was Reggie. And Reggie is the greatest defensive end. I'm not going to say edge rusher because he was so much more than that. He was an old-time defensive end that played the run and rushed the passer. Back then defensive ends were 290. Now all the edge rushers are 245 because, you don't get paid by stopping the run. But I think there's a sense from some old-timers that, guys like Clyde Simmons and Seth Joyner and Eric Allen were just products of Reggie, which is so not true. But I think that misconception is out there. And I also think the fact that those teams didn't do anything in the postseason is a factor. It shouldn't be, maybe for a quarterback, not for a corner who had 58 interceptions and 9 pick sixes. They won one playoff game during that whole stretch in New Orleans in 92. So I think those are two factors. Eric's got only 2 more years. You get 20 years after your 5 years after you retire. You get 20 years of eligibility. This was his 18th, and his first year as a finalist. And after that, you go to the seniors committee, and they have this huge backlog of guys from the 20s and 30s. No jokes, please. And he's facing an uphill battle. So I haven't looked at what other defensive backs are eligible next year. What are their first timers?
It's good if there is a late push for him, though.
Yeah. Hopefully he gets in. He deserves it. Yeah. Jari Evans is the other guy, Philly guy. Didn't get in. Kind of didn't anticipate he would, but he was a great player.
Great player. This is a good class. It doesn't really have a lot of classes have that major headliner. I was surprised Antonio Gates didn't get in.
I would have voted for him ahead of certainly Devin Hester.
Yeah. I was happy to see Andre Johnson get in. Surprised that he kind of leapfrogged the other guys, but certainly deserving to me.
Yeah.
Just a great player who was on some really bad teams.
Right.
And a cool dude.
Is he?
Just very cool. Just peak coolness. I think a lot of what we see in Jalen Hurts, the cool, calm, and collected, is Andre Johnson influence.
Interesting.
They're very similar.
What about you? I mean, did he influence you that way? Is that where your cool comes from?
Yes. Yeah. Very similar. I thought me and Jalen would bond over that, and it didn't work.
It's still early.
Speaking of Jalen Carter did not win Defensive Rookie of the Year, which if you would have told me that halfway through the season, I would have been shocked.
Yeah.
But he fell off.
He did. Still had a great year. He was second. It was close. I think it was 16 first place votes for Anderson and 14 for Jalen, but 13 people left Jalen off the ballot entirely. I think he was only on 37 out of 50 votes. I voted for him second. I voted for Anderson first, and I think the guy from the Rams third. But yeah, I didn't vote. I thought long and hard about it, but the production just wasn't there in the second half.
It's a shame for him because if he finishes the way he started, he wins.
If he finishes the way he started, he's a.
I'm saying like if you like flip them, I'm saying.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. So if you had a slow start and a big finish,
yeah,
very well could be the case. Yeah, very well could be.
Do you like being a voter for that stuff?
I do.
Okay.
I do, and I take it really seriously. I spend a lot of time on it. I send my team to you and Mulhern to troubleshoot, just make sure there's no big time gaffes in there. But I do a lot of research and I take it seriously. I just it's impossible. I can't criticize. I can't sit on the outside and criticize. Oh, they did this and they did that. If I'm not doing it myself and putting in the time, so I do like it.
Okay.
I want to be a Hall of Fame voter, but they haven't asked me.
One day,
maybe.
The last little bit here, we found out the Eagles are going to Brazil. That's fun.
Yeah. First South American regular season game. A lot of fans are not happy about it because they lose it's a home game.
Yeah, but they had 9 home games.
They had 9 home games, so you still get 8. But you do lose one. I don't know how it works as far as what you pay for. I don't know if you pay more when there's 9 games compared to 8. I don't know how that works, but I think it's kind of cool. It's a Friday game. We don't know what time it is. It's 2 hours later there. So I'm not sure how they'll do that. But I assume it'll be Friday evening.
I hate the idea of the NFL playing on Friday.
Why is that?
It's high school football.
Yeah, but they haven't started. They don't start that early.
Yeah, but I don't like it. I feel like
Maybe Texas they do.
I feel like they're creeping into high school football territory. I don't like it.
Yeah, I think they don't start. I don't think most high schools start the first weekend of September.
Yeah, but if football on Friday does well, we'll start to expand it.
You have Cherokee schedule on the wall there behind you?
I do not.
No? I'll look up their schedule. But, yeah, I don't think it should be a permanent thing or a regular thing. But one game, first weekend, I'm okay with that.
Okay. How do you think the Eagles will handle it? You think they'll go down a week early?
That's a great question. It's a long flight to go down.
For 2 days.
For 2 days. Yeah. I don't know.
And we don't know. The full schedule come out in May. I'm wondering if they'll give them the Monday night game after that, just to give an extra day of rest.
Yeah, that might make sense. Is it usually April? You get it April?
May.
We get April.
May.
May. That would make sense. And yeah, I mean, it's going to create some interesting logistical. Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can fly down Wednesday at 12 hours and play a game Friday.
Yeah, that's the thing. I wonder if they'll just go down and do a full week of practice down there somewhere.
Yeah,
that might make the most sense.
Maybe I'll come down for the practices and then just fly home for pregame and postgame.
Gosh,
what am I going to do all week if they're practicing in Brazil?
I don't know. I'm excited about it if I get to go.
You'll go.
Okay.
I'm confident. Yeah. Where have you been in South America?
Just Peru and Argentina.
Just Peru and Argentina. That's a flex right there.
Yeah, I haven't been to Brazil, so it'll be fun. Although it is it's an hour flight from Sao Paulo to Rio. It'd be cool to go to Rio too.
That would be.
Yeah.
Who does that song, When My Baby Goes to Rio? Who does that? When My Baby. Who does that song? Come on, Dave.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
You know that song, Rio. Oh, there's also the Duran Duran song, Rio. That's a different song. That's a great song. Rio. There's a lot of songs named Rio, apparently. Yeah. Sergio Mendes, great. Sergio Mendes had one. Anyway, we'll do a podcast on songs named Rio when we're really short on topics in June. Anything else?
No, I just got back from a little trip. It was fun. I was down in West Texas.
Out in the West Texas town of El Paso.
Yeah. Marty Robbins?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a good pull.
Impressive.
Yeah, it was fun. I was down
It's a song I first became aware of because the Grateful Dead did it back in the early 70s all the time.
It's a good tune.
I was once, it's a long story, but I was at a bar with Marty Morningweg and his wife. I was doing an appearance with Marty, and he was telling me about his career and how he coached in El Paso. And I started singing that song, and he and his wife joined in. And so I'm sitting there in this bar with Marty Morningweg and his wife, who's wonderful, singing that song. It was an interesting experience. Marty's got a good singing voice.
Does he?
Deshaun.
All right. Anything else here?
No.
Let's wrap this up. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye Podcast, please do us a favor, rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button, subscribe there as well. We'll be back with you later in the week. That's it for Roob. Dave. This has been Eagle Eye presented by Nissan.